Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte. So today we're continuing our season preview videos, and we're going to be rounding third here as we take a look in the Western Conference at the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks had a really good season last year. Seemed like a team that was on the rise, and now going into this year, are the expectations maybe going to be pushed back a little bit? We're going to discuss that here in today's video. All right, so the Vancouver Canucks, a team that a lot of people have high expectations for. After last season, they've got a good team there. They've got a lot of good pieces, but they did lose a lot. And we're going to discuss some of what they brought in, what they lost. So we're going to go over that today, and if they make the playoffs and how far they may go at the end of the video. So, all right, so let's look at the forward group as we have done this entire season preview video series. Niels Höglander, JT Miller, and Brock Besser. So that's your top line for the Canucks. They obviously had a lot of success last season. Höglander was kind of moving around the lineup, but hopefully he's able to find a home there on the top line. The second line, new acquisitions here alongside Elias Pettersson. You've got Daniel Sprong and Jake DeBrusk. I like both of those guys coming in. I think Daniel Sprong is a guy that last season in Seattle had a really good season. A lot of people had their eyes on Daniel Sprong. It's taken him a while to develop, right? He was a guy that was drafted by the Pittsburgh Penguins, ended up going to the Washington Capitals for a little while, and then he ended up going to Seattle where it just seemed to click for him. So hopefully he's able to continue that success there on the West Coast with the Vancouver Canucks, and I think the fact Vancouver saw him as much as they did, they feel pretty confident that the guy they're getting is the guy they saw last season. Jake DeBrusk, same thing. Really solid player. Things just didn't work out in Boston. We've known that for a long time now. They've been trying to move him out. So it just made sense. There's a guy, it's kind of funny how a lot of guys like Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov, which we'll talk about later, ended up moving out. It was basically a trade between the Bruins and the Canucks in free agency. You know, guys like DeBrusk coming in, and then Lindholm and Zadorov going the other way. Kind of an interesting thing that sometimes happens in the NHL, just kind of exchanging defensemen and players like that in free agency. But I digress. Elias Pettersson, we know how good he is. He's going to be a really good player for them once again. That 1-2 combo of Miller and Pettersson is really been the difference for the Canucks over the last couple years, especially in that Pacific Division, especially with a team like the Edmonton Oilers, where you have the two-headed monster in Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. You need something to compete against that. And the Canucks do have something that can very closely compete with a group like that up front in Pettersson and Miller. And then your third pair, you've got third line. You've got Dakota Joshua, Teddy Bluger, and Connor Garland. I like all those guys as well. They're properly slotted. I think Teddy Bluger really popped off last season. A lot of people liked what they saw from him. Hopefully he continues that this year. Dakota Joshua is a very reliable player. You know what you're getting from him, and adds a little bit of a different identity to this team than some of the other players here who are more skill and speed. Dakota Joshua brings another angle and edge to this team that is very important to a team like the Canucks. Connor Garland, prototypical, the goal scorer guy. He's going to fill in there. Probably like to see him higher in the lineup, but I think because of just how deep this team is, he's able to slot in the third line and be kind of okay there. Fourth line, you've got Danton Heinen, Pia Suter, and Kiefer Sherwood. So Kiefer Sherwood's been bouncing around the league a little bit. Dan Heinen, I really like his game. He's going to be a guy that can help kill penalties for this team. Really like that addition there. Pia Suter, similar in that sense as well, right? Like, you know what you're getting from those types of players. They're not the most skilled players, and the ceiling might not be as high, but you know what you're getting on a reliable, steady basis from that fourth line, and I'm okay with that. And then kind of moving along now to the defense, a couple of changes to the defense. Like I said, they lost guys like Zadorov, Ian Cole no longer on this team. I think they're really going to recognize that this season, just how much he mattered to this team. As crazy as that sounds, Ian Cole is a pretty big loss. And I just talked about Utah and Seattle. Excuse me. Utah bringing him in, I think that was a really good addition for them. And I think it's going to be a loss here for the Canucks, losing those two guys in particular. But they were able to bring in some pretty good players to kind of fill in that spot. You've got Derek Forbort and Vincent Desharnais. So Desharnais coming over from the Edmonton Oilers, and of course a guy like Derek Forbort, who has spent plenty of time in the Western Conference over the last couple of years. So it's not too much of a surprise to see him in Vancouver. Like I said, Quinn Hughes and Filip Hronek is your top pair. This could end up being a really good pair. I know that a lot of people, that whole Hronek trade a couple years ago, they're like, really? That's the guy we're bringing in? But I think he's a good, like, shutdown defenseman to play alongside Quinn Hughes. He's big. I know a lot of people either love or hate that sentiment. And you either take too much stock in it or not enough in the size of the player. But Filip Hronek, he fills that void pretty well. As long as he can stay healthy, that's really the key thing for Hronek. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be a good player there. So I think availability is probably the most valuable thing you're going to get from Hronek. You want him in the lineup, and you know what you're going to get from him when he's there. Second pair, you got Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers. I really like that defensive pair. I was a little worried about Tyler Myers, and that's obviously going to be a concern even going into this season. Like, how much more does this guy have left in the tank? The good news is that contract does expire next summer, July 1st, 2025. Tyler Myers, $6 million cap hit will come off the books, so I'm sure a lot of Canucks fans will feel pretty good about that. And for the most part, he's actually played fairly well during this contract. I wouldn't say it's perfect by any means, but he hasn't been a huge, it's like, oh my God, we're paying him way too much. He's still on the second pair on this blue line. So it's not the worst thing in the world. So with that said, now we have to get to the goaltending, because I think the goaltending, it's you're either too excited or you're too pessimistic about it. You've got Thatcher Demko and Artur Silovs. Now, healthy Thatcher Demko could probably win a Conn Smythe Trophy, could probably win a Vezina Trophy. But the problem is, he hasn't been there enough. He hasn't been healthy. That's been a huge problem here with Thatcher Demko, and that puts a lot of pressure on Artur Silovs, who, in a small sample size, did really well for the Canucks. And I think a lot of Canucks fans are excited for his future with the team, but he's not Thatcher Demko. And I think eventually it got to the point where he did kind of get exposed in that series against the Oilers, and that ended up being a huge problem for them as the season went along. So it kind of looks like there's going to be an entire season here where Thatcher Demko will not be the goalie. So then what do you do with a very unproven Artur Silovs? That puts a lot of pressure on a guy that doesn't have a ton of NHL experience and a lot of games. And, kind of looking behind Artur Silovs, what do you have there? That's another really interesting question, because I think the Canucks are really going to be relying on whoever that other guy is alongside Silovs, because I just don't think we're going to see much of Thatcher Demko this season. And, honestly, this is a solid team overall, and I want to look at this team and be confident that they could do similar to what they did last year. But the problem is, when you don't have that steady goaltender, that's what separates the elite teams from the pretty good teams. And I think right now, without Thatcher Demko, this is a pretty good team. You look at the other teams in that conference, in that division, they've got some good goaltenders, right? You look in the conference, you've got guys like Connor Hellebuck. In the division, you've got John Gibson, Lucas Dostal, and that's a Ducks team that I wouldn't even say is as good as this group in Vancouver, but the goaltending is good. Even in Edmonton, Stuart Skinner, but Stuart Skinner was really good last year. So I think for the Canucks, they just need somebody that can be Mr. Reliable. And that is not easy to do, because a lot of teams are looking for that goaltender that is Mr. Reliable. The Canucks are not that only team if Demko is out, but it's going to be interesting to see just how good Silovs is. We're going to see, a lot of Silovs this season, and he's going to end up being a big part of whether the Canucks get back to the playoffs or not next season. So with that said, I think the Canucks are going to have a great season. I'm not worried about this team. Even with the goaltending, I think they're just going to figure out a way to get it done. And not only do I think they're going to find a way to just get it done, I think Canucks fans are going to like me after this one. I have them finishing with 115 points next season, which makes them first in the NHL standings, just like 2011, winning the President's Trophy. That might be the curse that Canucks fans did not want to hear, but I'm really confident in this team. They're a complete hockey team, and I think some of the moves, they did lose a couple pieces last year, but I think they might actually end up being even better with some of the moves that they made. And really, I'm relying on that goaltending being good enough. And we've seen teams do this before. The Colorado Avalanche, when they won the Stanley Cup, Darcy Kemper, he's not the same goaltender he was then, but they found a way to win a Stanley Cup, right? When Vegas won the Stanley Cup, it was Logan Thompson, right? He wasn't a Vezina winning goaltender, but he was good enough, and the rest of that team was just so good, they found a way. I think the Canucks are going to be that team this year. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think of the Vancouver Canucks? Could they win the President's Trophy? Could they win the division? Let me know what you guys think down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.